You are listening to Offstage with DJ Law on Latino USA Radio. Don't forget to tell a friend and download Latino USA TV app and press the radio link.
It's cold like ice, chill. Come over. I'm cold like ice, chill. Come over.
You have arrived to Offstage with DJ Law, bringing you the best local, regional, and international music genres with interviews and positive vibrations. Thank you for joining Offstage with DJ Law. Offstage with DJ Law is a behind-the-scenes showcase of the artists, their music, and some of their life stories and experiences. Today, we have the honor of having music legend Joey Navarro as our guest. Joey is a third-generation Mexican-American Chicano from a small farming town of Tolleson, Arizona, just outside of West Phoenix. Joey discovered his music talent at a very young age and was considered a child music prodigy. He started his first band at 11 years old and still is playing to this day. After graduating high school in 1980, he formed the Joey Navarro Project. In 1988, Joey landed a major record deal with Island Records and released an album called On the Rocks, which is a fusion of funk, R&B, and sounds of the mid-'80s. At the age of 23, Joey started playing a new genre of music called contemporary jazz. He was also touring with major recording artists as a keyboardist and musical director. After years of honing his skills on the road, Joey returned home and took a 4-year sabbatical with music teacher Ernesto Chavarria, also known fondly as El Maestro. After completing his 4-year tutelage under Chavarria, Joey found the road and stage calling him again. In 2001, Joey relocated to Los Angeles to seek opportunities as a premier keyboardist and producer. Since then, his list of musical credits include working with Tierra, El Chicano, Andy Vargas, Pete Escovedo and the E Family, Jeffrey Osborne, Tom Scott, Connie Cole, Sister Sledge, Ralfredo Reyes Jr., Oscar Cartaya, Brandon Fields, Ursi Arvizu, Leland Sklar, Jim Keltner, Don Robinson from En Vogue, Jennifer Page, DW3, and a long list of other major artists. Joey also produced a CD entitled Soul Groove with the famous recording artist Kyle Wolverton in 2009. After its release, one of the songs on the CD called Can't Stop the Feeling rose to number 7 on Broadcast Architecture's Smooth Jazz Top 20 list. Joey also worked with Greg Adams and East Bay Soul. He co-wrote an entire recording project for Ursi Arvizu, which was produced by Ry Cooder, the same producer of the infamous The Buena Vista Social Club. In 2005, Joey was asked to join the legendary Chicano group Tierra, and in 2010, he also was invited to join the infamous group El Chicano. In 2012, he formed the Joey Navarro Latin Funk Band, who played regularly at the Baked Potato in Studio City, California. In 2014, Joey joined forces with Grammy-winning producer Paul Brown and recorded Grover Washington's Strawberry Moon, which was a successful production. In 2017, Joey became an instructor for Los Angeles College of Music, where he enjoys teaching and giving his students real-life experiences. On March 10th, 2022, Joey was recognized at the Arizona House of Representatives on the floor for his musical achievements, and he received a proclamation by his home state of Arizona. Being a lifetime musician, Joey has many musical experiences to name. His most cherished endeavor is his LA-based group, the Joey Navarro Latin Funk Band, which features mostly all original music, including his own arrangements of cover songs. It's one of his most challenging bands that features world-class musicians from Los Angeles and one that he is really proud of. Before we conversate with Joey, I'm going to play one of his original songs called Anaconda off the album After School. Hope you enjoy it. Thank you for coming to the Offstage with DJ Law show along with my co-host Patrick Murillo. It's an honor to have you, Joey, as well as your brothers Art and David Navarro.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you. Yeah. I asked them to join me because, I've done many interviews on my own. But, since we're back in Arizona, I just, number one, felt like hanging with them. Number two, I love these type of conversations, So they always have something that I may have forgotten about, or another point of view.
So where were you born and raised?
I was born in St. Joseph's in Phoenix, right? And we actually lived in Phoenix before we moved to Tolleson. I think I was already probably 8 or 9 years old when we did move. I went to kindergarten through third grade at PT Cole, which is off of 35th Avenue and almost like Thomas. I think Art went there too.
Yeah, it was
Right.
39th.
Yeah. So my parents, I think my father had acquired the property that was probably in the family for years, but I can't recall how the decision was made to move back to Tolleson. So I just remember going from PT Cole, third grade, ending up in Tolleson, and it was just like, as a fourth grader, like the whole world changes.
Well, it's a small town over there.
Different Honda, man.
Oh,
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah.
Did any of your family have any musical background or influence on you?
Yeah, actually on both sides, man. I know what I know about my mom's side of the family. My grandfather had a band with his brothers. How many brothers were there?
There were 7 villas, and they were called the Los Villas, actually, and that was in the 40s. And from what I hear is that they were like the first group that played at the San Carlos Hotel downtown Phoenix.
Whoa!
But there were 7 brothers, and they were pretty well known throughout the valley at that time and stuff.
So was it your father that was playing the music?
No, it was actually my grandfather, right? Yeah, Manny.
Yeah, it was
Manny Villa. Well, incidentally, both sides of the family are from Tolleson, so there's some deep roots there. On my father's side, he kind of dabbled. I think Tio Chino was also a bit of a guitar player, right?
Yeah.
But we have a couple of cousins that you may be aware of that have been part of the Phoenix scene for quite a long time. One being Frankie Mighty Mouse Favela, right?
Yes.
Okay. And
the Conguero, right?
Yeah. And Rudy
Favela.
Favela, his brother, is a talented jazz guitarist. So
That's that guy that we played with?
Yeah, Mr. Submarine.
Yeah, okay.
Mr. Submarino, yeah, man, yeah. So he's our cousin from my dad's side of the family, and I think I got the brunt of it from my mom's side. Yeah.
But neither of your parents played music or sang? or
No,
anything?
not really.
So it jumped the generations, huh?
Some I would say so.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you say, like every other generation and stuff, but
Yeah.
like mostly I think it was on my grandfather's side, and then it kind of skipped a generation, and we picked it back up, so.
Right on. Were there certain types of music you listened to as you grew up?
Well,
And if so, what, I
Yeah.
know you did, but what type of music did you like?
Well, from the very start, man, we were just always exposed to the R&B music that was happening at the time, the Chicano music. Well, back then, Jesus, I think one of my first memories was when we were living still in Phoenix. Art had a record player, and he had a record collection. It's the first time I ever heard El Chicano. Well, one of the first records I've ever heard on the turntable.
How old were you at that time?
How old was I already? David was probably three years
Yes.
old. or
Yeah,
so.
when we were in Phoenix, we moved out, 3-4 years old, so
Yeah.
it'd been 8 or 9 at that
Yeah,
time.
but David was probably like, well, when I got that, I was in the late 60s, so.
Yeah.
we
What
were-
year were you born, Dave?
67.
67.
All right, you're my age.
I'm the baby.
He's a baby. Yeah. But Revolucion was I think the one that's kicked it off because I was drawn to the B3. You know, one of my favorite tunes from that album was Sugar Sugar. Ding, 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 ding. I said, Mom, I like that sound, right? Yeah, that's how it all started.
Okay. And so, were there any particular events or experiences in your childhood that sparked your interest in music, to play music?
Well, it all started coming together when my parents gifted me with a toy organ, right? I think they were called Magnums that sound like an accordion, right?
Yeah,
and it had
was a little air pressure.
Yeah. So it had the buttons on the left side, and it sounded just like an accordion, you know. But that's when I discovered that I can pick tunes and melodies out and remember the timing. You know, it all started by ear.
And that's when you were 6, right?
Yeah, 6 years
young.
old. Yeah.
So, how long were you playing that organ that they gifted you?
What had happened is that my parents saw that I really loved it, you know, and I remember Mom coming in, and she would just kind of mess around with it too, you know. So she put all these decals on it, and I think it was the next Christmas when they got that gem organ.
Yeah.
Were we still in Phoenix when they got the gem, or were we already in Tolleson?
I think we were already in Tolleson.
Already in Tolleson, right?
Yeah, because then their next step was that big old organ from Alvaro.
Oh yeah, well that was years later, but I remember the gem
No, I
organ.
think maybe we were in Phoenix, but yeah.
I can't recall.
Which side of the street in Tolleson do you guys live on?
What do you mean?
there's
North of Van Buren, south of Van Buren.
Oh, we're
right
on
on the corner.
south side.
Adams.
Yeah, right on the corner of 91st and Adams.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
it's
south of Van Buren.
2 blocks south of Van Buren. Yeah.
Yeah, you're either Food Valley or Sunshine Market. We're Puro Food Valley.
Food Valley.
You weren't from Happy Town, were you?
My grandfather's sister had a flower shop there in Tolleson. Mary's,
yeah.
Oh, man, yeah. It was,
Murillo's.
Wow.
Not Murillo from there.
And
That's
the Riveras.
Riveras.
Riveras, that's the name. Yeah, well, man, Mary's has been there.
small world.
Yeah. I mean, we're old school. We moved there probably 72, right? When the house was built.
We moved 70 to rent, and I think the house
Yeah,
was
well,
done
we
in
built the
71,
house.
72, yeah.
Yeah, and the house that was rented was actually on Fillmore. That used to be like a church, right?
Yeah, it was right across the street from your cousin Steve Alvarez's house.
With all the sisters and
Hey, T-Town's gonna love this conversation. I'm telling you.
You have to mention Pete's Fish and Chips.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. Let's go back a little bit. Remember the tamale shop, Tolleson Tamale
These
Shop.
guys
Okay,
probably
yeah.
don't remember.
Oh,
That was-
I remember Saguaros.
that
Okay,
was-
if you remember Saguaros, then yeah. Okay, what street was that on?
Pierce.
My nana lived on that street.
Yeah.
Oh,
So she lived right across from Saguaro.
Yeah. Oh my God, we gotta.
And then the Camachos lived a few doors down. I don't know if you
Yeah,
know
yeah,
them.
yeah.
The Camachos. Oh my God.
Yeah, the Camachos.
Yeah.
Oh, so your nana were
My
married.
my mother and her brother, they're all from Tolleson.
Yeah.
And then on my mom's side, my great grandma who had like 21 kids, I believe, and 15 survived.
Woo!
They all lived where you were talking about, where my great Theo, Dickie Moreno.
Oh, Dickie Moreno.
And he had his family there, and he said people would, hang out over there.
Yeah.
He would take his guitar everywhere in the bars or
Yeah.
whatever. I
Yeah.
don't know if you remember him.
Yeah.
That's the one Steve Alvarez has his car.
Right.
And he passed on.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
How many kids? You said 17 kids.
My great grandma had 21 kids, but I think my understanding is 15 lived. But she had 21 births.
Yeah. Well, see, that was before the internet.
Oh, yeah.
That was the source of entertainment of the day. Yeah. Wow.
So the instrument you picked up was the organ, and I understand you started a band at 11 years old. In between the ages of 6 and 11, did you learn other instruments? Did you sing? What other things did you learn?
No, I remember in 4th or 5th grade, man, I went. 4th grade was Unit 1, which doesn't exist anymore. And that's what street is that? Monroe?
Started on Monroe.
Very
to
close to
George
Pete's
Washington,
Fish and
Jefferson.
Chips, right? And it was a old school. So I was there for a year, but fourth grade through eighth grade was almost like junior high, and they had one of my first music teachers. His name was his last name was Earl, Mr. Earl, and I remember him. And he put me on drums. So I played a couple of tunes on drums, and it was like, all right, this is cool. Well, piano is a percussion instrument as it is, and that ended up being really important because then I understood the dynamics of drums, and this actually shaped the way I wrote music. Because I was coming from a percussion type of background. Even if I played maybe one song in my life or two, it was the same dun 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 daga 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 dun. Dun, dun, that's all I ever played. But that was enough, right? If you give me a guitar right now, I can play La Bamba. But that's all about it, and I won't play it very good.
So it was mainly keyboard.
Yeah. I've had I even tried to steel guitar one time, right? Well, with a friend of mine, John Swan, and he says, he took it back. He says, you sound like you're killing a cat. So... With all that, I knew enough about the instruments to write for them, and then as I started kind of climbing the ladder, then the musicianship started getting heavier and heavier, and I thought, I'll leave that to the pros,
Gotcha. So your first teacher in music class was who?
I would say Mr. Earl.
And that's in junior high?
That was in junior high. But what had happened is that, I started playing by ear all my life, which was actually, I was very fortunate to do that, to come from that. But by the time I was 14, then I started hanging out with Mighty Mouse. I call him Mighty Mouse. Frank Favela and Rudy, right? And they turned me on to Chick Corea, to Herbie Hancock, to Ira Quere from Cuba, from the 70s, man. And these guys were really progressive, man. And I dug it. So then I started looking for the musicians in the Valley that were playing that kind of music. So they turned me on to the Benavides brothers. I think the first time that I seen Ralph Chavarria, Ricky Benavides, David Benavides, and Jimmy Benavides, which actually Jimmy became part of our group Suerte for a little while, right?
Yeah,
so
years.
So they would have these jam sessions at David's house. He was living, I think, in South Phoenix somewhere, man. I can't recall. But they were playing songs like Senor Mouse. And this is the first time I seen Ralph Chavarria play, and it blew my mind. I was like, holy shit, this guy's so good.
How old were you at that time?
I was probably 16, 17. I think I was still in high school. Yeah. And a couple of years before that, though, that's when I had decided to, I said, well, I had that talk with my mom and dad when I was 14. I said, I want to be a keyboard player. I don't want to do anything else, and they were always supportive, They never, all they would do is just encourage, They never said anything negative about it, regardless of what they experienced, during our crazy days, all the parties that came through. By the time I was 14, I made the decision to learn how to read, because music is a language, right? And to those musicians out there that are afraid of reading or anything, just it's nothing that you haven't heard already. It's just connecting the dots. Okay, what am I hearing, and what's it look like on paper? How can I recognize it, or how can I write it down? That's the way it was back in the day, and now with technology, it's a little different.
It writes it for you now, right?
Well, yeah. Now you can just delegate the shit. It's like you go to Fiverr and have anything done.
Right. So the music teacher that you had, did you learn anything from him that you use to this day?
Just the parts of drums and kind of tuning, But my main sources were the private teachers. We have Raul Castañeda that owned a music store for the longest time. I think he had one here in Tolleson for a bit.
Yeah,
and that was my first piano lesson.
Hey,
right?
He was he's also family. He was my dad's cousin. played.
Yeah.
He was a musician that played, locally for a long, long time. But I think he was a music teacher for one of the school districts. But he had his own music store there in Tolleson.
Yeah.
That's where we get all our stuff.
I had no idea they had a music store in Tolleson.
Oh, for
Yeah,
years.
yeah. What's that? Auto body
It's
shop
right across
there?
the street from
the high school.
Yeah, on the north side of the high school on the strip.
Yeah,
mall, but he was
yeah.
there for years. It's
Right.
Castañeda's music.
Right.
So during high school, were you in music classes, or is that when you were taking private lessons?
Well, yeah. I was into sports. I was a bit of a jock, because of my brother, man. He was a football player.
Okay.
He was number 30, so he was like, I looked up to him, so I was like, holy shit, I want to be number 32, But the thing about football is that by the time I was a junior, everybody started outgrowing me, man, and I was playing guard at one point. That's how small Tolleson was, I was playing guard, linebacker, I think cornerback and the only time I was a halfback, I remember doing one of these routes, man, and they were supposed to lateral the ball to me, right? And I felt bad about it because I fumbled it, right? Well, I didn't exactly fumble. The ball was about 3 feet over my head. And I had to chase it down, man. I got sacked lost about 14 yards. But getting back to the music thing, it was Mr. Castañeda had turned me on to a teacher, my first teacher. And then from her, she introduced me to Armin Boltman. And Armin, I studied with him for about 3 or 4 years. He was a cat from Seattle, Washington. Old cat, just bearded and cool as hell, man. So as soon as I got my license at 16, man, I was already driving from Tolleson to Scottsdale. That's how dedicated I was, man, on a weekly basis.
So what band did you form at 11?
Okay, I was approached by George Hernandez. I think they were already freshmen. George Hernandez, Roy Zuniga, and Danny Lopez. Okay, now Danny Lopez, his father and our father was they were friends, right? And he used to sing in the church, I think, right? And he knew a little bit about music, and he was actually really important to us too, because they found out that I had that I played, and that at the house when we had just moved, the garage that was supposed to be a club that my dad wanted to open up for the longest time became our music, right? So one day these kids, I was playing basketball, 6th grade, and this was during recess, right? So they came, they were waiting for me. I was playing, says, Joey, come here, right? And I was like, hey, these kids, man, I knew they were from high school. And they said, hey, you play organ, right? I said, yeah. I said, yeah. Well, we have a band, man. You want to join our band? I said, yeah. Right? I didn't know. They said, well, you got a music room, right? I said, yeah. I said, can we rehearse at your house today? I said, yeah. So I was playing with my friends, and it was almost like the sun was coming down, and when I got home, the house was full, and my parents were in a panic. They said, Joey, why didn't you say anything? Everybody just showed up, said, hey, we got a rehearsal today. Luckily, Danny's dad was there, right? Do you remember when that happened?
No, I wasn't.
Were you around? Yeah.
Not maybe a little bit later in the day, but not at that time.
Were you there, Dave?
Not there.
Yeah. So they showed up, and my dad was kind enough to let them set up, right? And so we started playing, of course, Angel Baby, Sabor a Mi, and I mean these kids were good already. Danny, being from a musical family, he's a cat that can play guitar, bass, drums, trumpet, right? So my dad's sitting there just watching everything, and I saw him just kind of light up. And to make a long story longer, he ended up becoming the manager within weeks, right? And then Art came in, and who would have thought, man? He says, shit, started singing, man. And shortly thereafter, probably within about 6 months to a year, then Art became the singer.
And what was the name of the band?
Well, that one was
Los Nuevos.
It was even before that. The kids were called.
Yeah.
Faith Interlude.
Yeah, something like that.
The Faith Interlude, and then we started going through staff changes. Right, started morphing into something else, and then the first band was Los Nuevos, the News. Yeah.
Los Huevos.
Yeah, we got a lot of ridiculed, yeah. But then Mom and the tias started getting involved in it, so we had uniforms and the whole 9 yards, But my dad was smart enough to get weddings, He's that was pretty good at networking, He had a lot of movidas, yeah.
How many years apart are you guys?
6.
We're 6 years apart, and David and I are 6 years apart. 5 years apart, yeah.
So, Art, how did you like playing and singing with the band?
Yeah, I was already out of high school when I walked in one day, and Joey had this band here, and they were singing some song, and it was like, whoa. So I walked in there and said, what are you guys doing? And I said,
Whoa good or whoa bad?
what do you think if I went in there?
Well, when you hear him say, give me that mic.
To try this and stuff, and I think they were getting ready for a church gig and stuff, and I don't remember what song it was, so I helped them do it. They were going to do it there at the Catholic church, and then they had asked me, well, you want to do it, but it was a bunch of kids, and I said, I'm not going to do it, man. I'm 18 years old, all peludote here, man, with a bunch of,
Jermaine Jackson.
But later on, it worked out, and we started getting better musicians, or thinning it out and getting where we wanted to get to. But
So you were playing sax, and you discovered you had vocal talents.
yeah, I always thought I had vocal talents in the shower, but had never really tried to. You get together with a familia and you sing all the old songs, with your Dios and stuff, Little Joe and Rudy and the Reno Bops and all, so that was the first time I actually tried it with a mic and stuff. And as it went along, it just got better and better, so. And when we were playing, I was playing saxophones and stuff. But
Nice. Joey, how did you know inside that made you believe that you were going to be a musician your entire life?
I never felt like I had a choice. It got to the point where I became that good where it just kind of got me, because I saw how people were affected by it. I knew I had a gift. I knew that I wasn't just going to be a piano player, because I started coming up with melodies, and I just loved the process even back then. I've always wanted to get into recording. I think my first session was I was like 16 or 17 with a guy named Clark Rigsby here, and I still worked with Clark Rigsby to this day. But he was the first one that brought me in, and the smell of the tape, the studio environment, man, that's what got me and really inspired me to get as good as I could.
Those were the analog days,
yeah,
right?
I was going to say that's when it was just say tape.
Yeah.
Analog.
Right, yeah.
What was your first pro keyboard that you ever got to use?
The pro keyboard was probably that Gem, the Gem organ, because it sounded like a Farfisa, right? And it had just a couple of settings on this side with the volume, but we ran it through an Ames amp that we bought at Arizona Music Center from Diana Lee's parents.
Diana Lee's parents owned that center?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, and they were the nicest people. They were helping everybody out, But I had this gigantic guitar amp. Ames. Well, I think Diana's father had part of that. Of the company that made those amps, but it was loud. It was cool. So then Pops was always supportive. Okay, what do we need? Because everything was still organ based, right? I didn't start playing piano until about the same time I started making it wasn't the switch, but it was just piano was becoming part of my arsenal. So, yeah, I think they bought me a piano for, I don't know if it was a birthday or something. It was just an essential thing. So it was an upright piano. So I had the piano, I had the organ, and as I said, my dad was connected. So there was a Morados. Remember remember Connie Morado and Arvado Morado? They have a body shop. You have Adams on the next street, which is
Washington.
Yeah,
It's
still there.
Jefferson, right?
Jefferson.
Yeah,
yep.
yeah. So Arvado used to dabble in keys. I mean, he was a pro keyboard player, but he had this Yamaha. It was called the YC25, I think. It was a double manual, right? And it was like a Yamaha's version of a B3 at the time, because they had some of the they didn't have drawbars, but they had like switches, like the 16-foot and the 8-foot and all that. But it was the first time that it was being run through a Leslie, So once you hear a Leslie and you work with a Leslie, I mean, there's nothing like it, man. It's like, if you're playing organ and you have control of that Leslie, then you play different. That Leslie, that combination makes you play different. You dig in. It's a whole different.
The big box speaker.
Well, yeah, the box with the tweeter
horn
and the
twirly.
woofer. Yeah.
I hated that keyboard. Sometimes, we were playing Friday nights, and then we'd have a couple of gigs on Saturday, a day gig and then a night gig. Then on Sunday, maybe 1 or 2 gigs, and to load and upload that monster.
Yep.
Yeah, the Widowmaker, man. That story.
Everybody's gone when it comes to loading up. And shit.
Yeah. Well, those B3, I never had a B3, but yeah, that Leslie was 150 pounds easily.
Wow.
100, almost 200 pounds. I remember one time we're going to a gig, and this was there's different types of Leslie. You got the ones that are cabinets, and these other ones that are on they have casters, right? And we were in the old truck taking the gear somewhere, man, and somebody hit the gas too hard, and we heard a crash, and I saw my Leslie on Van Buren, boom, looking up like this. Like, I was like, oh no! So we loaded it back up, took it to the house, plugged it in, and it was all right.
Oh, thank God.
It was a tank, man.
Yeah.
So
Eventually graduated from what high school?
Tolleson Union High School, and I'm an official Wolverine.
All right.
Yeah.
So is my mother.
Yeah.
What happened to your band after high school?
We continued playing, So regardless of the musicians that came in, Danny Lopez was with us for quite a while, And then when Jimmy Benavides came in, then we started meeting some of the musicians that were involved in some of the bands that we grew up listening to. As we were talking about before, Fat City. There was they were really popular in the 70s, and we should mention some of the players, man, which was Bobby Soul on sax, Rudy Carrubias, Duty. I'm sorry, Duty Carrubias on drums. He's
Covarrubias.
yeah.
Marty Ramirez.
Marty Ramirez on guitar, Phil Luna, so
Joe Betancourt.
yeah, and I remember Art coming back home and saying, God damn, this band is kicking ass, man. And this was Earth, Wind, and Fire. They were, what kind of tunes were they doing?
A lot of Earth, Wind, and Fire, a lot of R&Bs.
A lot of funk.
Yeah. And then they had that trombone player, I don't remember his name, but you had Bobby Soul sometimes would double up. He'd play tenor sax and alto sax at the same time, on each hand.
Yeah.
I saw
Whoa,
that.
I have never seen that.
And then Marty not only played guitar, but he would play sax too. So sometimes between three of them, they'd have a 4-piece horn section there.
Wow.
All right, well,
It was wild, man. It was very impressive, man. That's when I was in, man, we got a long ways to go, man, but that's what inspired me, also, man, let's make a push, man. The guys were awesome, man.
We listened to the song earlier called Anaconda. When did that come out?
now we're talking about the Joey Navarro project, where I started playing at Chewy's. We had Robert Scott on drums, Tony Contreras on bass, and actually Rudy and Frankie also recorded with me. Rudy's on this tune. Keith Johnson, would just passed away recently on percussion, but Tony Melleby came in, and if when you check out this tune, really check out what he's playing, because this was him, maybe 1 or 2 takes, just reading it down, and he was just blowing, man.
It sounded has like a reggae feel on it when you first started.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You know, and I really enjoyed that. And that was done in the mid '80s, maybe 5 years after you graduated from high school.
Maybe so, because we used to play that tune at Chewy's. Now Chewy's, we used to play there Monday nights. We would follow the big band from Mesa.
Mesa Community College Big Band or whatever.
Yeah, I forgot the maestro's name, man, but he had So Nancy Jackson had given us that opportunity.
We're going to play another song called On the Rocks. And I understand you were signed with Island Records for this particular album, right?
Yeah.
Or was it for this song?
Well, it ended up being the title track. I wrote the song after we started negotiating with Island. I chose it to become the title track. Anybody that hears this album, and especially bass players, man, they love the way Tony plays, because he was very progressive at the time. Nobody could dump like him, man. You know, even Rene Camacho, which is my bass player now, he had bought this album when it came out, and we're kind of revisiting the tunes, but man, it gives a lot of kudos to Tony and Robert. So
It was ahead of his time, huh?
yeah.
Right on. Well, we're going to play On the Rocks, and we hope the audience enjoys it.